and welcome to Junetober 2026. I'm Elizabeth from Petals and Parchment, and I'm so excited to be kicking off this year's event. Thank you so much for joining us. Whether you've been here since the beginning or this is your very first Junetober, we're thrilled to have you crafting along with us. This year we have 4 amazing designers whose kits will be featured throughout the month. Myself, Elizabeth at Petals and Parchment, Tracy from Lottie's Magic Attic, Emily of Emily Designs, and Stacy of Crafty Dragon Creations. Junetober is a full YouTube hop with a different creator sharing a project every single day in June. Each creator will be working with one of the 4 designers' kits, depending on which week they fall into. Here's how the month is organized. Week 1 is my week, Petals and Parchment. So all the creators posting during the first 7 days will be using my kit. Then starting on Monday, week 2 belongs to Emily Designs. Week 3, beginning the following Monday, is Crafty Dragon Creations with Stacy. And week 4 wraps up with Tracy from Lottie's Magic Attic. Each designer also has a fun game happening inside their Facebook group, along with daily freebies for you to enjoy during their spotlight week. So you're going to want to go to each creator's group, grab the goodies, and join in on the fun. I'm so honored to be starting us off today, and before we jump into my project, I just want to give you a little preview of the kit I created just for Junetober. Hope you love that kit as much as I love designing it. Now let's get started with today's project and officially begin Junetober 2026. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I just want to let you know this is an official video. You'll want to see this graphic to know that you're watching an official video where you're going to see a token for the Junetober YouTube hop. There might be many other videos, but this will be your clue that you're going to get a puzzle piece meant for the hop. So stay tuned and I'll show you the first piece for the YouTube hop later on in this video. I'm so thrilled that you're joining me today, and I'm going to start off first by dyeing some papers with you, and then we're going to work on assembling a journal, creating a cover, and adding a few special decorations. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is make some papers, which is one of my favorite things to do. So I've got a 13 by 9 inch pan here and a few sheets of paper, and I like to stock up every year around Easter with Easter egg dye kits. I had a lot of leftover Easter egg dye when my daughter dyed eggs this year, and I mixed the blue and the red together to try to get purple, which will match my kit. If it's not the right shade, I've got this watercolor powder and it's violet. I absolutely love watercolor powders. You can find some at Lindy's Magicals, but I love them so much I got a huge set. They were a bit of an investment, but it's one of my absolute favorite art supplies. If you don't have watercolor pigments, you can use a watercolor palette. You can use ink pads and put it on an acrylic stamping block and then spray it with water, and you can use that. You can use alcohol inks. You can use acrylic paint. So whatever you have available in the color that you want, let's make papers with them. You don't have to have the same supplies as me, but I'm just going to show you my process. So the first thing I do is I start by pouring some in my pan, and this looks a little redder than I like, but I think I'm going to check on the paper first to see what it looks like and maybe go from there. Okay, so this looks a little more rose colored, and I'm going for a dark purple. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of watercolor pigment to my Easter egg dye and see if that helps the shade at all. And if it doesn't, then I'm just gonna start pouring it directly on the papers. But it's quite strong, so I'm hoping it will do the trick. Let's see if that helps at all. That's a little more purpley for sure. Won't really know what it looks like until it's done drying, but I think I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit on there just to be sure. A little bit of this stuff goes a long way. What I usually do is pour it back into the bottle and then pour it back on top, but I'll just swirl it around a little bit. And we are getting some cool patterns in here already, and you don't have to pour it everywhere. You can just pour little drops and see what happens. And I'll just continue layering like this until I get through my whole stack of papers. Dry these in several ways. You can leave these for a day or two in the pan and they will dry on their own and get crinkly and wonderful. They won't stick together, they won't get yucky. Or you can use a heating tool or a hair dryer to speed up the process. You can also stick them in an oven at a very low temperature and just keep an eye on them. Okay, I'm going to dry my papers and meet you back here for the next step. Okay, so I've got some of my hand-dyed papers here and I'm really pleased with how they turned out. So now we're going to set to work personalizing them a little bit further. I've got some of my favorite stamps here and some of my favorite stencils and a whole array of inks in different purples. Let's get messy. To play with some Distress Spritz sprays, Villainous Potion, Wilted Violet, and Seedless Preserves. Okay, so I've got a whole heap of papers here. I'm really excited to get started. In my group, I asked everybody what they wanted to see for the Junetober video, and the overwhelming response was Franken paper. So that's what I'm going to do today. Here are all the papers that we made together, dyeing them and stamping them. And I also printed a few of the pages from the kit in small 2 a page so that I could use these in the Franken paper. And then I've got my favorite pages from the kit, and I've also got some full-size purple sheets that I dyed, and then I've also got some different black and purple scrapbook paper that I had in my stash. So be sure to check your scrapbook paper if you have any for something that would fit with your journal. I'm going to use these to make individual sheets that fit into my journal. So I took one of the 12 by 12s and I cut it down into a journal cover, and I made, I don't know, about a 1-inch spine there. And this is going to be my journal cover eventually, but I'm going to wait and do that last. I want to see how the journal feels before I work on the cover. So the reason I've got this plain piece of paper is because I want to keep my Franken papers within this border, so this will give me sort of like a template to build my papers off of. So I'm just going to have fun tearing and ripping some paper to an appropriate size and using the pieces that I love the most to create my own pages. And I'm not going to think about it too much. I'm just going to rip and tear and have fun. going to begin gluing them to each other, and I'm going to sew them after this step, so I'm not going to worry about gluing them down so heavily like that. But if you don't have a sewing machine or you don't feel like sewing, by all means glue with a little heavier glue. I'm just using a purple glue stick here, just enough to make sure that everything comes together. Let's see. Okay. And get ready for it, because here comes the first piece for your game board. You're going to take that clue that I just gave you, cut it out, and glue it into spot 1 right here. And each day you're going to visit a YouTube creator and they'll give you a token, and you just put them in the order that they're given to you. And by the end of the game, you'll have a cipher, and we'll give you a letter key, and you get to solve the cipher for a chance to win a prize. How fun is that? So put your token right here, and be sure to tune in for the next one tomorrow. Katie at Crafts and Paw Prints is up next, and I cannot wait to see what she makes. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is sew a pocket. So I've got 2 single-sided sheets, and I just added a little bit of ink to the tops of the pages. And what I'm going to do is sew the main page first across the top so that there's a stitched design. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is just punch a small hole at the top for some pockets. And I ripped the paper on accident, so I'm going to just cover it with a clump of string and sew through that. And then I've got 2 pockets here, and I'm just going to sew down the middle as well. Here's that pocket. It's a double pocket, and you can see a nice sewing detail at the top because we went ahead and sewed that page first, and then some notches to indicate that they're pockets. And I'll trim this up a little bit later, but for now I'm going to sew the Franken papers. I'm just going to go all the way around the edges and also down the middle. all of the pages sewn here, and I just want to show you before we move on to the next step. You can sew around individual pieces to give more definition, or you don't have to sew at all. You can just glue the papers down. Here's that double pocket that we made. I really love how that turned out, especially with this little piece here, all the thread sewn in. Nice messy look. My sewing machine's giving me some trouble today, so hopefully I can get through this project and then take it in for a tune-up. I just wanted to show you the papers. I think they turned out really beautifully, and let's move on to the cover. Okay, after some careful consideration, I've decided to do a recycled mailer cover, and so this one is super huge. What I'm going to do is cut it down, and I'm going to focus on leaving this bottom piece intact, and so this is kind of where my spine is. I just found the center, and here's the inside cover piece that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to leave about an inch border around that. I'm going to cut that out using my paper trimmer. You could also use a ruler and a craft knife if you have that available. And what I'm going to do is just make some marks for myself. Okay, so this is what I'm left with now, which is going to be the cover. And the first thing I'm going to do is open this up, and I'm going to cover the front and the inside cover with fabric and sew that to the front. So I've got this Waverly 1 yard of purple fabric I thought would go really nicely with this Victorian era kit that I'm using. So I'm just going to cut a piece of fabric large enough for 2 sides. This is what I have so far and here, and since this looks nicer, I'm going to flip this around and make this the inside. Okay, the next step is going to be to cut off this excess here. So I've got a cutting mat and my rolling sewing cutter here just to try to get as straight a line as possible. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the sides here. This time I'm going to use a ruler. And one more time on this side as well. Looks like I got my stitches caught here. Because this corner is going to be on the inside, I'm not too worried about it. Now I'm going to cover this side with scrapbook paper. Okay, I'm running into a few hiccups because I have to turn this project inside out because my sewing machine is misbehaving. So I'm just going to cover this with scrapbook paper and then cover the seam with lace. Then I'm going to sew this in place as well. I'm just holding it down to wait until the glue dries a little bit so that it's straight and it's where I want it to be. So I'm going to sew twice, once across this side of the paper and once across this side of the paper to sort of hold this down. And then I think I'm going to have to glue each one of these down as well, but I'll do that in a little while. So here's what I have now that I sewed 2 lines here, and I'm going to just glue this to the inside flap so that the top has a nice finished edge. Okay, now the next step is going to be gluing down this inside cover. Now I'm going to glue this down, and then I'm going to add grommets here in the center so that I can put an elastic binding, and then I'll finish by gluing these together to form the cover. Here's our cover, and I'm just going to train it to lay down correctly. And we've got a pocket on either side, and this will be a reusable cover because we've got the grommets with the elastic. So now we can put the pages inside, and I'm just going to alternate the decorated pages with the dyed pages. And if there's a piece that needs to be glued down, I can do that now or later. Here's the journal. So I'm going to stop here for now and put this under some heavy books for a few days and train the papers to lay flatter. I'm also going to use a bone folder to crease them and make sure that I have all of my little bits and bobs glued down the way I'd like. And then when we come back, we'll work on a closure and the cover and decorating some of the pages inside. Okay, so I'm back, and this has been sitting under a heavy book for about 24 hours, and everything is laying down really nicely, and I think it looks really beautiful. There's just a few more things that I want to do to the cover. What I'm going to do here is cover this page. I should have done it while it was taken apart, but I've decided I don't want to see that packaging, so I'm just going to cover inside each one of these, and then I'm going to put some Velcro to keep each side closed, and then I'm going to start thinking about a closure and some pockets for the inside covers and see where that gets us. So I've got this page that I'd really like to use for those inside covers. I'm just going to cut it down so it slides in the pocket a little bit easier. Hopefully this is enough for both sides. And then I'm just going to cut this in half, and hopefully this is a good size to slide in that pocket and glue in place. Oh my goodness, it is perfect. I can't even believe it. I think I'm just going to put the glue directly in the pocket, and I'm going to use this art glitter glue because it will fit in there nicely, and also it dries very quickly, and it's a really good glue. So okay, and then I'm just gonna adhere that with the glue, and I did notice that this is coming up a little bit here, so I'm just going to add a little bit more glue right there. And then I think when I do the other side, I'm going to take a piece of ribbon or maybe bias tape and just go over the edge here to clean that up a little bit. let this dry for quite a while now, and I'm quite pleased with how this is turning out. Here's the more finished looking edge for the inside pocket that we created. And then get these off here and we'll add some pockets. Now the kit does come with some lace pockets, which would look really lovely against any of these papers, but what I'm doing is I've printed 4 to a page, some of the whole journal pages that I really liked the design, and I'm going to use those for my pockets, and I've sewn some twill in purple and black to the back of the pockets, and I'm just going to attach that right here, and I think it looks fabulous. So let's get that stuck down. Since the twill is here, I'm just going to use my fabric glue again. You can use whatever glue you like, but I would use a heavier glue in this instance. Since the pocket will be getting a lot of use, you just want to make sure that it's stuck down really well. So I'm just giving this a moment to adhere by holding it down where it's wet behind so that it will stick to my page. Okay, and while that's drying, I'm going to move to the back and put this spooky cemetery back here. And I actually got this twill from my daughter's Halloween broom that broke a few years ago. I knew it would come in handy one of these days. Okay, and while that's drying over here, I'll show you a quick little project that comes with my kit. This is a hidden journaling spot. So you just print the page and cut everything out, and these 2 bottles fit back to back. And what we're gonna do is just run glue all the way around the outer edge. Just make sure to stay as close to the edge as you can. I'll go ahead and get that little rope as well, and you're going to stick this down so that they line up as best you can. And then if you'd like, you can ink around the edges just to cover up any pieces that might be showing. But I did print this double-sided, so anything that's showing kind of looks purple anyways. Okay, so the next step is to cut right along the bottom of the rope in a straight line straight across. Something like that. Then you're going to open this top portion here slightly, and we're going to glue the journaling card in this little pocket. I'm gonna put the roses down at the bottom because they're pretty, and you just want to get that in the middle if you can, and then it slides inside this bottle and you have a hidden journaling card, and you can write your secrets inside. Go ahead and put this in our pocket here. Now I'm going to take these off, and my next step, I'm going to add some Velcro to the pockets here so that any goodies that we put inside these front pockets don't fall out. So I like to keep an assortment of Velcro dots on me at all times for just such an occasion. Okay, and now we have a functioning Velcro closure to keep all of our ephemera inside the cover. Let's do that again on the back. Let me clean this up and we'll start on the cover. Okay, so the next step, I'm going to begin working on the cover, and I think I'd like to use the Ghoul family. So what I'm going to do is cut out the picture as carefully as I can so that I have just the frame, and then I'm going to use something called Dimensional Magic to make it look like a real picture frame. This is a product from Mod Podge called Dimensional Magic, and it takes a little bit to dry, but the result is absolutely worth the wait. If you don't have Dimensional Magic, you can also use Mod Podge. I know there's some similar products out there, but this is the only one that I have experience with. So now we have our picture frame, and I'm just going to go around the edge with some ink to sort of clean up the edges and get rid of that white. I'm going to use black soot because the frame is sort of an off black. I'm going to put down a piece of wax paper just to protect my work surface. You don't have to use very much of this and it stays in place quite nicely, so I'm just gonna go around the edge here. Okay, I think that's plenty. So I'm going to put a fan here and hopefully it will dry a little bit quicker and we'll come back and assemble the cover. Okay, as you can see, my frame has dried and it looks really fabulous. I'm quite pleased with it. It's got a nice sparkle to it and a nice feel as well. You can see the black color underneath. I'm very happy with it. And then what I want to do is stain this photograph so that it looks more antique. And what I'm going to do is use some of my raw umber watercolor powder and a little bit of water and a paintbrush, and then also some diluted coffee, and I'm going to make a few shades of pigment. So I'm going to start off with the darkest one and add a little bit of coffee to activate it, and then I'm just going to pick up some of the color and add it to the next pool, and the next one I'm going to dilute even more so that I have several different shades of darkness for the coffee color that I'm going for. You can add more water to thin it out and more color if you'd like. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do is just spray some coffee on both sides so that it lays flat, and then I'm just gonna add a little bit of color to it. Okay, and this is what I ended up with. I just kept painting until I was happy with the result, and I made it super duper grungy. And I've got a little bit of paint here, so I'll probably just dump this whole thing either into this coffee mixture or into another spray bottle and use that at a later time. I'm gonna get this mess cleaned up and then meet you back here to put the finishing touches on the cover and discuss a closure. Okay, so I found this paper that I dyed a long time ago and I haven't had the opportunity to use it for anything yet. I'm going to use this as the mat for this picture. I'm going to use two different kinds of glue here, more dry glue stick and then also a wet glue, just to make sure that it adheres really well. And I'm going to work kind of fast here before the glue dries, so hopefully they can work together. Okay, and then I'm just going to tear a little border around it as if it were matted professionally and see what that looks like in the frame. You might not be able to see very much of it, but if there's any space poking out, it will be pretty. Alrighty, and then here is my frame. Okay, you can't really see anything after all, but it does give the frame somewhere to land. So what I think I'm going to do is just run a little bit of ink around the edges. This is Vintage Photo Distress ink. Just gonna go around the edges here. Okay, and then I'm just gonna glue the frame. And now I have something quite substantial to attach to the front cover. Okay, and then I've just gathered a few more layers. So I have this piece of corrugated cardboard and I'm going to glue the picture to that. And then I'm going to start putting all of this stuff on the cover, including some cheesecloth. If you have any of that available, I would highly recommend it. I love the look of it. This one is just giving the slightest texture and color difference to the back here. I'm just building up the layers. Okay, and then I'm going to place this on top of this and glue this to the front of the journal. But first I need to grab some cheesecloth. I keep quite a bit of this on hand. It usually is just that little thing that I need. Sometimes the tiniest little addition is what really sets off the artwork. and it doesn't take very much at all. Snip off one panel here, and I might even be able to split that one more time. Now we have one layer. Put this in between here, and I'm going to cut that down even more and save that little piece for something else. And I'm just going to tatty it up a little bit. I don't want to pull too hard because it will start unraveling completely, but I do want to get it going. So here's what it's going to look like on the journal cover. Okay, so flip this over, and I'm going to use probably the fabric glue this time. And hopefully that'll be enough to stick the first two layers here. Then we'll really sandwich it with the back of this. I'm going to put a lot of glue on the back of this. And you want to work rather quickly because the glue does tend to dry pretty quick. Oh, commit. Okay, and I'm just going to press down for a minute or so and give the glue a chance to adhere. Hot glue would work really well here too. Okay, so this is where we're at now. I think it looks really beautiful, and we're going to do our closure and a few finishing touches. Okay, I've thought of a few different types of closures, and I'm going to talk through it with you, and then we'll see which one looks best. So I've just got a plain black piece of sari silk. I got this from tearing apart one of those rugs at Five Below, and I really love how it's just tattered and worn without even trying. You can just simply tie this around the journal and leave it dangling like this. So that's one option, or you can go with a bow. This particular piece I think is just a little too short for a bow closure, but you could make it work so that it looks like this. Then I had another idea. I found this thinner purple ribbon, and I could just punch a hole and put a grommet here and here and put a small piece on either side and then tie it like that, and then I'll have a small purple bow here. I'm just going to try to cut this in half as evenly as possible, and I'm not sure what material this ribbon is made out of, so I'm just going to try to seal the edges, and it looks like it is some type of polyester, so now it won't come undone anymore. And I've got some gold grommets here. Whatever color I decide to go with, I try to use the same throughout the entire journal. So for this one I would use gold. Okay, so I've already got the Velcro. Luckily it was a little off center, so I'm just going to put my hole right here, and be careful that you're not punching a hole in the other side. In fact, I've done that before, so I'm going to use a different hole punch. Okay, so there's the one in the front, and try to line it up here as best I can of the Velcro and the stitches. And there's the second grommet. Okay, so I just fed that through the hoop, and now I'm going to tie it on this end. And then the same on this end. So all I did was make a really small loop on this side and feed it through. Once it comes through, don't pull all the way, and just put both pieces through the hoop and pull tight, and then tie it one more time to stay tight. And close your journal. So there's my closure, and we're going to do one more thing together before we'll call it a day. Okay, I'm going to scoot you in a little bit closer, and we're going to just make a quick dangle. So here I've got some jewelry findings. I don't really know the technical term for this, but I just hold it and add beads to it in no particular order. I've got a few pretty things here. I've got these little tiny keys that I've been waiting for just the perfect project for, so I think this might be it. And then I've got a pretty pearl here to dangle and another larger key. So I know I said that I was going to use gold in this journal, not 2 seconds ago, but I found these beautiful pieces and they fit the haunted manor that I'm going for, so I think I'm just going to use them. And I've just got a mixture of white, black, gray, and purple beads here in several different varieties. Just trying to get them on there and just make it pretty. And in these, the top can become the bottom, so you don't want to fill it too full because you need some space at the bottom to sort of bend the metal back on itself. So I hold it like this, like I turn my wrist as far as it will go, and then I'm going to try to roll it back on itself. So first you're supposed to bend it sideways, and then you turn your wrist all the way over and then quickly do like a rolly motion. And I bent the whole thing but not too shabby. I'm gonna bend it back straight, hopefully as straight as I can get it, and show you here at the bottom I have a little loop now, and I have the original loop on this end. I don't know if you can see that very well. Okay, so now that I have this, I'm gonna take this bulb pen and put it through the loop here. And while I'm at it, I think I can dangle these keys from the top. I'm gonna close that for now. So that's what I have so far. And then setting the beads to the side, I'm going to get a little jump ring and attach these pieces down here at the bottom so that it's a little more dangly. I'm going to grab a large one, maybe two. And whenever you open a jump ring, you don't want to pull it apart from each other. You want to twist one forwards and one backwards. So I've just opened it slightly askew that way, and then I'm just going to put on a couple of my dangly bits here and attach it to the bottom there, and then I'm going to turn them back towards each other. Don't try to squish them towards each other, but hopefully that's making sense. At the end, I do try to squish them a tiny bit back together so that nothing falls out of the little hole, but there we go. So now I have a dangle, and I'm just going to find some ribbon or fabric or something to also tie to this. Okay, I have some of this blossom yarn that I'm going to tie to my dangle here. I got this at Daiso, but it's really pretty. Okay, so I'm just gonna stick the loop through and then put both the loose ends through the hoop and pull it tight and down like this. Again, put the hoop through. This time I think I'll put it through the key ring. Open the hoop and stick the two loose ends through and pull it tight. Okay, and that is so pretty. I absolutely love it. Let's get this attached. Okay, here's my dangle, and I think that was just what she needed. Okay, so let's do a quick flip through of this journal. Here's the cover and the back cover, and we made this beautiful dangle, which I am just loving. And we have our ghoul family here that lives in Wickmoore Manor. We've got some creepy pockets that show their castle, and we've got this hidden journaling card to write all of your lurid secrets in. And what better way to kick off Junetober than with some Frankenpages? There's lots of sewn details throughout, and I can't wait to continue personalizing this journal all throughout Junetober. Don't forget to dye your own papers. It's so much fun. And we've got some sewn built-in pockets here. Beautiful papers, just waiting for decoration and personalization. And we've got a reusable journal here and so many pockets to fill, including these deep side pockets here in the front and back cover. These are going to hold so many goodies. I've really enjoyed creating this journal with you. Thank you so much for joining me. That's it for me, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for this Junetober 2026 jump off party. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and learned something new, and I hope that you like this kit and want to pick it up. Check it out in my Ko-fi shop. It'll be on sale for the month of June at 31% off. And don't forget to follow along the YouTube hop and fill out your game boards for a chance to win fabulous prizes. Thank you so much for being here. Have a spooky, wonderful Junetober 2026. Happy crafting. See you next time. Bye.